Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Kegley. We've got Brad Sturdy, Kedrick Prince, and Illini legend Marcus Griffin here tonight. And there's not much going on. We were going to talk about the mowing patterns that they use to keep the practice fields looking nice for Coach Bielema's spring ball. But then we decided, well, maybe we can find something to talk about. Brad, folks were a little surprised this weekend with Morez Johnson jumping into the transfer portal, and I have to say, he was my favorite Illini. I love the way the guy hustles and plays. So I wish him all the luck in the world, unless he's playing against the orange and blue. But you have been close to this. Obviously, you and Ked, follow these things really close. Maybe a few thoughts on this.
Which thing, Mike? Which thing do you want to talk about?
Start with Morez to begin with.
Yeah, I think Morez is just an interesting case of a guy who has been committed for a long time. I think the disappointing thing is that he's been committed so long, and you see him as a potentially really good college player down the road. Yep. And so he's a kid who could be really good. I think he wants maybe a different role than they want for him. And he's got to, people are throwing money at these kids. And so it's very difficult to say no when people give you a massive raise. I mean, we're all that way too in our daily lives. I mean, if somebody offered me an extra $500,000, I mean, that's another Lamborghini for me. So, I mean, I'm all in on that. So, but no,
that's another
I think
piano from Marcus.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that back there. Hey, that looks just like my living room looked a while back. So, no, but they have. But I would say that, and I think he had different expectations. I think when you bring Tommy back, and they're gonna, Boswell and Ivasic have both, at what I was told today, they both committed to coming back. I know there's still things but what I also said was, the portal's open till April 22nd. So that's about worth as much as anything. But I mean, that's the way you got to build. But at the same time, when you bring Tommy back, Morez is basically either Tommy's backup or he's a power forward. Well, there are certain matchups we know that he struggled as the power forward in those matchups. So how many minutes are you going to get? Are you going to have the same role? What are you going to do from that? Do you want him to play that role? So it's a tough thing for both sides because he wants to, be more of a focal point. And I'm not saying he can't be, and I think he will be down the road. I'm not sure he was ready for it this year as a freshman, but it's hard for guys. And so, and then when people start throwing big money at you, I get it. I totally understand it.
And Ked, what are your thoughts on this? And I would say too that in today's world, you don't have to go seeking the money; it seeks you out in terms of these back channeling and things like that. But Ked, go ahead.
What I want people to understand is what you just said, Mike. Thank you for clarifying that. It's easy to sit here and when you watch a team that you root for, like I believe you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, and I don't know what NBA team or NFL team Griff roots for or Brad Sturdy. I don't know. I'm a Bears fan. Okay, I'm a Bears fan. So I understand that when I'm a fan, you want things to be the way you want them to be. You want things to look pretty. You know what? I don't want to show my age here, but I like the days when Magic Johnson played for the Lakers, and I knew he was going to stay a Laker until he retired. Those days are done. The game is different, and people are talking to these kids before the transfer portal opens up. And what I don't like is that it's easy for people to just rip a kid and think because they see him perform or her perform on the court, they know what's going on behind the scenes. For example, so many people have said to me, well, kid, if they work hard, they would earn a position. What the hell? Do you think these kids are going to practice playing, jacks? They're trying to earn a position. They're trying to work, but sometimes it just doesn't work. I mean, there's other players in front of you. And what you guys understand, and please, if you're listening to me, when you're in high school and you're in your high school, you're in your AAU team, you're the stud, you're the man. But when you get to college, everybody's the man on their team because they came from the same situation. So it's easy to sit and blame the kid because let's use Morez's situation, which was your question. A lot of people only took a part of what I said, and I'm not going to pretend that it's not out there about Kofi and Dane. He wasn't being critical of them. What he was saying was, I don't just want to be a low post guy who sets screens. I want to be able to put the ball on the floor, shoot jump shots, and do other things. That's what you should have taken from it. But some people choose to, they didn't do that. And that's okay, because if that's what he wants. And Brad said it best. We can all sit here and say, yeah, we wouldn't do that because we love the orange and blue. I will challenge anybody out there to sit and tell me right now, if whatever job you have, if you worked for a grocery store and they paid you $100,000 a year, you could go to another grocery store and make $800,000 a year doing the exact same job. Let me guess, I'm going to stay for $100,000 because I like them. You're not doing it in today's world. So don't expect the kids to do it. And at the end of the day, it's not the kids' fault. They didn't create this monster. The NCAA did. So it stinks losing players. Griff, I know you're going to chime in because you're a former player, but Brad is right, man. I mean, he wanted something different, and it's not a bad look on the coaches. They have to respect these kids because guess what? It's going on everywhere, fans. It's not just Illinois. Get on Twitter. If you want to get on Twitter to harass people, go educate yourself because it's happening at all schools.
Yeah, Marcus, you were there. You were in before all these temptations were there.
Yeah.
But you know what it's like to play on a team, to be honest, that should have been a Final Four team. You know what it's like to compete for a starting position at the highest level. Give us your impression of this from a background that's totally different than what any of the three of us bring.
Oh, well, I can still recall, we'll never say the names, but I can still recall this temptation that schools used to send out even to a little guy like me from Peoria, Illinois. So the temptation was there. It's a little bigger temptation now because everybody is doing it on everybody's front porch. And so it's just crazy. My only thing is that I remember the days that Illinois kids wanted to go to Illinois so bad. They wanted to rep their state university. And then when you get a kid who was committed as a 8th grader, a 9th grader, and then in 1 year he leaves, it makes you just question like what is going on. I have nothing but respect for the whole program that they got over there, but it just makes you question it. It really makes you question it because I thought he was going to have a big second year. I didn't. His first year is going to go. He's a freshman. Still, he averaged what? 8 and 7 as a freshman. And so I kind of figured he was going to be a double guy next year. And so he was going to get more. I don't know if he was going to be shooting threes, but like KP was talking about that. Out of that post, I got exactly out of that. What he talked about, I got exactly out of that. He just wanted his game to develop differently, just being a back to the basket type of guy. He wanted to be able to face up. He wanted to be able to dribble. He wanted to be able to do some different things. And it sucks now that he's not going to be able to do that in orange and blue.
Yeah, one of the things I want to throw out there is, the pressure that you have as a coach is you have to win today or you get shown the door. So Morez is one of the best in the country at what he does as a freshman, going out there and getting rebounds and protecting the rim. I mean, the guy had an outstanding freshman year. And of course, at that point, if you're a coach, if think about it, if Illinois had lost 2 more games this year, probably would have been in the NIT. So you don't want guys doing what they may not be as good at. And he, unfortunately, is so dang good at what he does. It makes it hard to say, hey, you're dominating the boards, but go out and shoot a few threes, and that developmental path can take a while. And I guess, and this is where I got really frustrated, is I thought it took some guts for Morez to sit in front of a coaching staff and tell them exactly what he wanted. And it would have been easier for the coaching staff to tell him what he wanted to hear. And then you end up with a frustrated player next year. Again, it's unfortunate, but I wish there had been a way to come to a medium ground, but it just didn't happen. Brad, any thoughts as we kind of round around Morez, and we'll start to head to Trey White if you want to kick that off.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything everybody said about Morez. The one thing that you look at Morez, he's a freakish offensive rebounder. Like he's top 5 in the country in offensive rebound rate. That's insane when you think about it. So if he is doing that as freshman, he's obviously good. Then the next thing is when you look at him, well, if he's on the perimeter more and not being able to dive, and I think a lot of people. The other part about this is I think somebody mentioned it over here in the chat. You're going to be sold a bill of goods because somebody's going to tell him, we're going to play through you. We're going to do this. We're going to get you this. And the reality is they might give him a play here and there, but it's going to be mostly like he's going to be a guy. He's going to run to the rim after setting a screen. You're going to look for him to attack the offensive glass. And so this is what they do. And so this is I guess that's the way it is, but they're going to try and sell him to be that. And hopefully he finds a good home because I really like the kid. He's a great kid. I've been following him I remember first time I saw him was in Wisconsin when he was a freshman, and I was like during COVID, and I watched him. I said, I really think this kid's going to be a stud, and he turned out to be pretty good. So Trey White's a different situation because I think Trey White is a kid that had a really good year, best year of his career. Illinois. Regardless of what you think, he put him on he put up a really good numbers, the best numbers of his career, most efficient numbers of his career. I think he's a kid that really liked it here. Interviewing him, that kid was probably outside of, there's some guys who are really good interviews. I thought Trey was really a great interview because he was so real when I talked to him. And I really enjoyed hearing his perspective because he didn't just give canned answers. He's really good at, answering questions truthfully and answering the whole thing. And so I thought he was really good. And so I'm going to miss him. But I think in his case, I think his role was going to be less, and than he wanted. And so they basically kind of, it's like, hey, here's what your role is going to be. It's probably not what you want. So in his case, he has to go in the portal to find that, and I think he's going to make it. It would not shock me if somebody gave Trey White $1 million in the portal. I mean, I think this guy's going to get good money because I think he's a really talented wing. But at the end of the day, Illinois got to field the team that they want to field around, Tomislav and Kylan, and then go from there.
I want to comment just real quick before I go to Trey White. I want to play devil's advocate with the person who made a comment and what Brad said. You're right. Some of these coaches will sell you a bill of goods. Yeah. That's possible. But what if they don't? There's the other side of that. The other side of it is that they may allow him to do what he wants to do, and he may not be good at it, and he might be. I just don't think it's up to a coach to determine whether or not you can predict the kid's future or a kid's outcome, because they might. And then here's the other side of it, and this is a side I don't like, and I don't want to say this, but if say he went to, I'm not going to say a school because if I say it, somebody's going to think that I know where he's going. Say he went to a school and it didn't work out. Well, I'm going to tell you, and so all the people out there understand there's a going rate for players and positions. And I'm going to tell you, so like I found out a guy who played basketball at Illinois last year who was possibly going to enter transfer portal. At his position, he's worth $1 million. Kind of the same position as Morez. Morez is a much better athlete, a bigger athlete. So Morez is probably going to get $1.5, $1.8, $2 million because that's the going rate for him. It's like it would be for a guard. Can you imagine if Kasparis went out and said, I'm staying in school and I want to transfer? So having said that, if the school does decide to, quote unquote, screw him over, then he has the money to fall back on. And this is life-changing money for some of these kids. Mike, you have always said that on all the podcasts we've talked about from all the football schools and everything. These kids are going to be able to take care of their families if they invest in and don't blow it. And what's wrong with that? That's what we always say. That's the American dream. Okay? So now, Trey White, we had a person on our board kind of, took a shot about, kid, you weren't a big Kasparis fan, but you like Trey White. They're different players. Trey White wasn't asked to run the show and lead the team. Trey White's position was different. I thought he helped Illinois win a lot of games because of the way he played. And Brad is 100% right. He always steals my thunder, and I can't stand that sometimes, Brad. He is a good guy to interview. I remember the first time I met him, I had texted him a few times, and he ghosted me. So when I went up and met him, and I told him, I said, hey, man, I tried talking to you. You ghosted me. He called me out, and I showed him the text message. Dude went back to his when media day was over and texted me and apologized to me. And the reason I'm telling you this, we see these kids as athletes. We see them as guys that we want them to win games for us because that's the team that we root for. But they're human beings and they're kids. They have feelings. Griff, you're sitting here right now, man, and people are just impressed because you're on the show. But when you're on that court, man, when people see you on TV, Griff, you're a star. You're somebody that's different, man. And so, but I understand that you have a mother and a father and that you go home and you have issues. And some people don't, they take that for granted, and you can't. Yes, it's great to root for your school, but they're human beings, man. And I don't never want to take that for granted.
Facts. It was just, I want to go back to Morez Johnson for a second. When we talk about just wanting to develop a little bit more, it would have been easy for him to be like, let's utilize this athleticism. I want you to run to the front of the rim, and I want you to get early post position. Just giving that player that freedom. When was the last time any of us seen an Illinois post player run to the front of the rim to get dominant post position for guards to be looking for him in that position? See, doing a little adjustments like that can then give that player enough freedom that he feel like he's evolving. But you don't see that.
But
they just run to the 3-point line.
Not
and
since Kofi. Yeah.
But that would be Kofi, and he doesn't want to be Kofi.
Well, even Dane did it a little bit. Dane did it when he played.
But Kofi really was the first. I'm talking about like first big down, like you running the floor, like what I used to do back at Illinois. I used to run down the floor, try to get early post position, and then when I didn't get the ball, I got out and I set screens and we got into the offense. And it made the big feel like I'm more a part of the offense in a guard-dominated system. That's all. But going back to I like his game, man. It sucks that he Mr. White, he was a stud. And from previous podcasts, y'all know I like hard-nosed, tough guards like Boswell and him. They tough guards. They're not afraid of anything. They will guard anybody. And it definitely sucks to see him want to leave.
Yeah, now I'm seeing some comments that are asking about NIL, and let me throw something at you as a guy from corporate America who spent 15 years in pharmaceutical and medical device sales. When you get into a marketplace that is growing and relatively new, every year more people jump in there because people look at Illinois and they look at, let's say, last year's team and they say, look what Illinois built, adding Domask and the year before adding Terrence Shannon, and look, they went to the Elite Eight, and just 3 or 4 years ago they sucked, the Gross era, and then took Underwood a couple of years to change it around. And so you see these teams who go in and so instead of a line that you think where you're going to invest like this in the NIL, like, oh, we did $2 million last year, we'll do $3 million this year. Unfortunately, the other teams look at that and they say, wow, so if they did $4 million, I'm going to do $6 million next year because I want to get in the game. And so the thing that Illinois has is they're probably one of the top 15 NIL teams in the country. People can argue, yeah, Brad would say 10, I would say 15, but let's put them at 10. That means there's still 10 teams that have more than them. But the thing is if there's a bunch of teams, let's say that have a decent amount of money, all you need is one of those bunch of teams to go after one of your guys. Yeah. So basically, if there's a bunch of teams that have $3 million and one of those teams goes, I'm going to give Morez $2 million. Now you've just moved, you're overpaying potentially for what Morez might be open on the open market. But that's a pressure when you have a new market and people keep wanting to come in. You've got the people who are getting a ton of money, and you have the people who have a little bit of money, and they're saying, okay, you know what, instead of me, giving a little bit out here and there, I'm going to take my pile of money and give it to one player. Yeah. And if that one player happens to be on your team, whether you're Illinois or somebody else, that makes it really hard because Ked goes back to the life-changing money. I challenge anybody watching this or listening to this, if you were a 22-year-old and somebody said, you know what, I know you're getting your business degree at University of Illinois, but come down to Alabama, you'll get the same business degree and we'll give you $1 million more than you're getting at Illinois. How many people are going to say no to that? Anybody?
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you
They
guys a
wouldn't.
question? Sorry to interrupt because I really don't know a lot about the NIL. So how does the payment system, is it a one-time payment or do they get paid every month? How does that work?
No, it's every month because you can break that contract. So, for example, any school would be crazy to say, like, for example, Marcus Griffin is going to get $1 million, and then all of a sudden you get $1 million, Griffin, and you say, the hell with it, I'm just going to check it out and say I'm going to be hurt. I like the way Illinois does it. I can't say every program, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Brad can comment on this, but I know at Illinois, if you can receive NIL money, yes, every month, but they also want you to do community service hours to earn some of that money, which I really, really love because at the end of the day, you get that money a month. And here's the deal. If you do something in those contracts, and they're really interesting, if you break the ethical code in those contracts, you lose all that money. And just think about this, and I don't want to go south, but remember what happened to Terrence Shannon Jr. last year? Remember all that stuff that went with him? Well, Griff, he was not guilty, but people assumed it, and his NIL got axed because of that. So there's a lot to go on with that. And so people think they're just going to give you all this money. It doesn't work that way.
Brad, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I know NIL is one that it's really a challenge when we try to explain to people, even if you're a top 10 team, doesn't mean you can just pick every player you want. And the other part is, and I'll let you take over, Brad, is what people really don't understand is at the end of the year, you're down to zero again. And now you got to raise $6 million, $8 million, $10 million from people. And so this NIL is a system that I think over time it's going to need some serious regulation, which it may as the congressional settlement is progressing. But it's a rough system right now.
It is. And I think NIL, and I've said this many times, they blew it back in Griff's day. They should have been paying those guys for every jersey sale. When they do an event, they should have got paid for all those things. And I don't think we'd have ever gotten in this situation because you know what? Marcus would have been like, you know what? I'm glad I'm getting, $50, every day or whatever from a sale or whatever. I start getting this money coming in and I would be happy. I'd be more content. But instead, here we are, right? And so it's become crazy. But I think some of these kids, and I think a lot of these kids that you get in the open market and you see what other kids make in the open market. You see the kid from New Mexico and UCLA comes out and says, okay, his agent was asking for $3 million. UCLA said, let's do it. And now they got their point guard, right? I mean, when you're talking that kind of money, it's very difficult. And so a lot of these guys go in the portal to find out, get their market. Now, because what do you think Tomislav Ivičić would be worth on the market right now? I mean, I'm not trying to scare people, but if you don't think that he would get well over $2 million as a 7-1 guy who can shoot the three and pass and handle and do all those things, his rebounding numbers, his shot blocking, all that stuff, it's crazy. I mean, he'd be worth a ton. So, I think it's crazy. I mean, he's gonna get a massive bag from Illinois too, and somebody's saying that Illinois is not going to be there. I'm telling you, they're going to have plenty of money for NIL. So we'll see how it plays out. But this is it's a world now that's different than we ever had, and eventually the market's going to correct itself. We're going to start having long-term contracts. Guys are going to have to pay money when they transfer because they're going to be buyouts and all those stuff. And so I don't know. It's the way it is. So, yeah.
Hear that is just crazy to me to think about kids buying out of contracts. That's just, I'm sorry, Mike, to jump, but that's just crazy to think that's where we're headed with this NIL. It's just crazy.
And it's tough because look, the other thing is you have plenty of kids, and this is not just it's all kids, white, black, whatever, what do they really know about handling money? And what do their parents know about handling money when you start getting dollars in the millions, and it puts a huge stress on people trying to figure out how to deal with these type of problems. And then you have advisors who, you don't know if you can trust them. I mean, if a guy like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, with all the money he earned, could get robbed by a financial advisor.
Anyway.
I mean, the things these kids have to deal with nowadays are just incredible. And we haven't even talked about social media yet. So let's talk a little bit about, Brad, some of the targets that are out there that you think Illinois is very interested in, and maybe, what you think of the player and why Illinois is interested in him.
Well, I mean, the guy who just came off his visit, obviously, or is coming off his visit, is Josh Dix, the Iowa guard, 6'6", extremely good shooter. Shot 42% from three. He's also extremely efficient. Scores from two. Makes free throws. He extremely great passer. Just facilitator. I think he was 91st percentile in ball screen actions as the ball handler. So that's fantastic, right? So really good player. The thing about him is he also fits off the ball as a spot up shooter. He's a guy who can cut. He's a guy who play with the ball, off the ball. He's ideal for a guy next to Kylan Boswell because he can help alleviate some of those ball handling things. And so I think that's why he's the kind of emerged as the primary target right now in the portal. I think they have Price Sanford from Iowa, who is going to be visiting this week. His brother was the one who lit up Illinois in the Big Ten tournament, his older brother. And so they look at him and they say, he's got good size, 6'6", 6'7", really good, another really good shooter. And then so when you look at this, you see a guy who really fits as a guy who could, if he projects like his brother and improves like he did, he could be really, really good the next 2 years. And so you fill in off the wing with him and Dix, and then they're going to need some athleticism too. So that's why they need to add, whether it's a European kid like Dame Sarr would be an ideal fit, and Illinois is in a really good place with him. So you start putting all these guys together and you find a core group. There's still some needs out there. They need some size up front. They need some, other guys up there, and we'll see what happens with. There's still a few guys who haven't made their decision, at least public, regarding their choice to stay or go. So this is going to be interesting.
The Dix situation, Illinois, you guys were talking about NIL money, and most people know that it was a battle between Kansas and Illinois, but then Iowa, made it a big push as well. And for those out there who are curious and want to know, Illinois did everything right. I mean, it's hard for Illinois to lose a player. Sometimes it's just not a good fit. The kid may want to go somewhere else. And it's not my money. I'm not going to sit and pretend that I'm the one giving it. But, I think Illinois positioned themselves extremely well to land him. They did everything they possibly could to showcase how they could utilize him and what he brings to the table and how he could help them. I've said, and once Fran was let go and he went to the portal, it was open game. And Illinois was interested in him from the very, very beginning, and I know he knew that. I do have friends who work in the media before. I became a part of Illini Guys and Rivals. I was a part of Scout.com before I went to 247. So a lot of people I'm still friends with, and on the Indiana side and Iowa side and Michigan. And, if you talk to people from Indiana, they're scared. They really think Illinois put themselves in a good position to land him. Does that mean it's going to happen? Who knows? Nobody does. But, they're going to put together a really good roster. I mean, I'm just not – they've always done it. They have. I mean, they're not going to go back to the days where they win 15 games again. I mean, they're going to put a roster together where they can compete and one that they like. A lot of people are here making comments. Some people are upset about the offense and how the offense is run. I put an article for Illini Guys. I don't know when it's going to be posted, but I will tell you this. To be upset with the offense, I don't think it's fair, because I was digging in, doing some homework, and for the last 2 years, just throwing it out there, and it's available, not just available to Kedrick. Who do you think led the Big Ten in scoring for the last 2 years? And it was Illinois. Of all 18 teams, and before the West Coast schools became part of the Big Ten, it was Illinois. So there's other parts of the game. I'm not sure. I would be lying if I didn't tell you I want to see more X's and O's and things like that. But they're scoring points. That's not the issue. So, there's other things that's causing them to, where they slipped up and lost games, but that's not just the offense. I know people want us to sit there and just say the offense because they're scoring 83 points a game.
Yeah, just to say something about the offense, but then I got a question to flip to you guys. I think the issue with the offense is that it gets stagnant at times. It's like they have
guys watching.
What was that?
They have a lot of guys watching instead of moving. Everybody moving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brad and I talked about that today. It's not as fluent, but maybe you guys have heard more about this. Is the Illini wanting to get older? Are they still looking at the high school seniors to come aboard, or are they looking to be older in the portal?
Well, I think they're definitely looking to be older. They've got the two kids coming in, Keaton Wagler and Brandon Lee. I think they're both like I know Brandon Lee was like the top-rated player in New Jersey, and Keaton Wagler's the Gatorade player of the year in Kansas. So you got two guys who are really, really, quality kids. I think Wagler needs to get stronger but he's extremely skilled, really good shooter. And Brandon Lee's got the physicality to come in and play. But again, it's hard to get minutes because they're going to add guys who are older, and you're going to have to come in and compete against older guys as freshmen stuff. And then I think, Sarr is another one. This is one of those things when you look at Sarr from Europe, he's playing against grown men right now and just really playing well. So he's had a great, finish or spring here. These last probably 6 games, he's been fantastic. So this is they want to get older though. I mean, there are going to be some guys that they're going to bring young guys in, but you got to bring older guys in, guys who've been through the wars, whether sophomores, juniors, seniors, whatever they are, or 5th-year guys even. And so they got to find some guys that fill that role. I would say this. There's another question. Mike, we'll transition to the next one. I don't know if you want to talk about guys. Will Riley is a really, we expect Kasparis Yakuchonis to go because he's, projected in the lottery. Will Riley's kind of a different animal. I've seen him as high as 15. I've seen him as low as 2nd round. His NBA feedback is going to tell the tale for him. I mean, if he goes to a combine and they tell him you're not getting picked in the 1st round, and he's going to get a, and the other part about it is, does Will Riley want to, because where he could project is, let's say he's 15 to 20. He could, if he gets a big NIL package, comes back, and then he moves himself up to number 10, you're talking millions of dollars difference between 20th and 10th in that guaranteed money thing. And not, because I'm not saying it's bad, but playing in the G League is not near as much fun as playing in the NBA or college basketball. So that's where Illinois is going to have a package in place for him where he can make a ton of money to come back and play and kind of be a focal point of the offense. And obviously he's a really talented scorer. So he would be a very intriguing option.
Yeah, I think that's the next way we were going, kind of talk about those two. And I think really you've succinctly done that. One quick moment though, folks, we are going to go and pay a few bills here for a minute or two. So wanted to let you think about Busey Bank, because if you are looking for somebody who is going to be a fantastic bank for you, a good partner in your life and your business, Busey Bank.
This is the run my own business dream. This is the college is paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
And of course, we've got one other one. My Bookie has some fantastic opportunities for those of you who enjoy a little bit of gambling and having some fun beyond just watching the games. Check your calendars. It's March Madness time again, and every game is a chance to cash in. From the first tip-off to the Final Four, every night promises high-stakes matchups, wild finishes, and big-time betting opportunities. Better yet, Bet and Get from My Bookie is back to sweeten the deal. place a cash bet on March Madness, and get a surprise reward. Whether it's free bets, cash back, bonus chips, you never know what's coming next. Whether it's a number one seed steamrolling or an underdog shocking the world, smart bettors know the real money is made one game at a time. Listen up, sign up now with code MM50, and you can boost your bankroll with a deposit bonus designed to make the most of your money. If you don't want a bonus, that's okay too. Just make sure you let them know that we sent you. Bet on every game, anytime, from anywhere, only with MyBookie.
With my YouTube plaque and a white.
All right, folks, we are back. Wanted to go a couple things. People are talking right now. A few questions. Brad talked about Tomislav and Boswell. Right now, it looks like they are going to be back. Obviously, the portal's open for a few more weeks. So, every day is a new day. And we thought that some people who were in the portal would be back. So, you don't know. And again, we try our best to not throw the kitchen sink at a player for wanting to do what they think is better for them. I just don't understand, where all of a sudden a guy's a good guy, then all of a sudden he's the biggest piece of dirt on the planet. Exactly. I don't subscribe to that. If you want me to trash a kid for doing what he thinks is best for him, that's fine. There are times, and I'll use this as an example, when Kofi decided not to come back to Illinois, and he could have come back for his senior year and then his COVID year and probably made $2 to $3 million a year. Instead, he got talked by some adults who I didn't think had the best head on their shoulders to go play essentially overseas because we all knew he wasn't going to get drafted. That was a shame. But we don't attack Kofi. We just say, you know what? We wish he would have had better advisors. And that's just the way we're going to be. If you want somebody who's going to rip on kids, find another podcast, because we're just not going to do that. The other things that I would say I would say is I see a lot of Brad Underwood needs to be fired. I guess I don't. I go back to the looking at what we had when we were irrelevant under the last 4 years of Bruce Weber and pretty much 4 out of 5 years of Bubble John Gross. I'm not interested in going back to those years either. I'm not trying to say that Brad Underwood has no faults. I think everybody has skills and abilities that they can hone. Even Bill Self has had a couple rough years the last couple years. So look, even the guy who I consider probably the second best coach in college basketball behind Rick Pitino, who didn't look good when his team was playing a couple nights ago. Everybody has their day, but again, I guess I look at this as Illinois needs to figure out a way to keep guys for a couple years if possible. I think that's on the staff to figure out what they need to do different or better to get that done. But I also think Illinois is going to be a target because they have good players, and there will be teams that will talk to kids and say, hey, we can make you a ton of money. And then the Illini have to make really hard choices because while they're a top 10, top 15 team in NIL, it is not an infinite bag where you can just keep pulling stuff out. Brad?
Yeah, I think you said it. But right now, Brad went to the Elite Eight a year ago, and they went to the round of 32. At the end of the day, I mean, you're here to the goal of that basketball coach is to win games. I'm sorry. I mean, it's a business. It's a game-winning business. It puts people in the stands. It brings in money for your revenue. And so, to talk about firing a guy who just made the second round of the NCAA tournament after replacing an entire roster, and most of them were out of eligibility. I don't know. It'd be kind of crazy. He's won 3 Big Ten titles in the past 6 years, the most wins in the Big Ten in the past 6 years. I mean, here's the thing. If you say we need to do things differently, we need to do a better job of continuity. They need to do a better job of evaluating what they're going to do. Then I would say I agree with you. But if you're talking about getting rid of a coach that just did this, then you sound like kind of delusional. And so I don't know. I think that's where it doesn't make sense. I mean, but if you want to say that, hey, they need to do a better job of this, or they need to do a better job of this, I think they need to play better defense than they have the last 2 seasons if they want to be successful. When you look at the teams that made the Final Four, a lot better defensively in Illinois. So
I'd agree with that. One thing I want to see things different too, because if you think he's going to be fired, he's not. He's won too many games, and I know fans are probably going to, fall off the chair when I say this. But say, for example, he did leave. Do you know how many schools with coaching jobs that would want Brad Underwood? Here's the deal. Brad's right. I mean, there's things I would like to see done differently defensively. I've said it when we started the podcast. I'm an X's and O's kind of guy. I want to see adjustments being made during games. And I'm not the only person who feels that way. But from a talent standpoint, they're going to recruit. Illinois is an attractive program. They're going to get players, and players want to be at Illinois. And I understand there's a lot of people who are frustrated and mad. And nobody understands what really goes on except for the players that are in the program. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. And every program has things that don't go well, things that do go well. If you don't think there's problems I'm going to say Kansas. Let's use the University of Kansas. How in the hell do you think A.J. Storr felt coming off one of the best years of Wisconsin to barely getting on the floor at Kansas? Do you think he was happy about that? Do you think his mother was happy about that? Probably not. So look at Indiana. They just lost 3 or 4 guys. It goes on everywhere. But because you follow Illinois, you think they're the only program that struggles. And that's not true. It's not. And I can assure you, I mean, we can see the comments. The people who are upset about the defense, I'm sure at some point in time, those things will be addressed during the offseason. But because the coach doesn't come up and have a press conference and say, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know and understand that I told Marcus Griffith if he doesn't use his left hand, we're going to take his contract away. Those things are kept in-house. They're not going to discuss those things, and they shouldn't discuss those things with you. But again, and every player that leaves the program doesn't mean that they're mad. I can tell you right now, obviously people know I've talked to the players. There's players that have left that program that are heartbroken because they love the program. But it wasn't a good fit. And it's okay. I mean, look at our jobs. The people used to work and retire the jobs for 20 and 30 years. People get jobs every 5, 6, 7 years now. It's not like it used to be. The times are different. So I get the people are mad. I understand that people are frustrated with Trey for leaving, Morez Johnson Sr. for leaving, and whoever else is going to get in the portal. I understand that. I mean, I don't blame you. I'd like to see continuity. I want to see the players get older. I think that's part of the problem last year because they weren't old. Then some guys you get that don't pan out. There's a comment right now from Ricky Rowe about Ben-Hum Rickhouse. When he was brought in, we all knew coming in what kind of shooter he was going to be. But guess what? It didn't happen. So whose fault is that? Is it really anybody's fault? The kid has had a bad year shooting.
I'm not. I can respond to the coaches, to all the fans that's talk about fire coach. Like, do we not recall how Illinois basketball was prior to coach coming here to Illinois? Like, you was never sold out. You could get tickets at every game. The student section, the Orange Crush was not at all the games. And now we're one of the top 5 to top 10 best college basketball programs in the country right now, year to year. We're getting international top players to come to the University of Illinois. I don't think that's ever been said before. We're going and snatching McDonald's All-Americans, National Players of the Years out of other states, Mr. Basketball out of other states because of the recruitment prowess that coach and his staff does. So I'm definitely not going to jump on that. No, coach is not going to be fired. He wins 20-plus games every single season. In his down year of this year, we still won 20 games and made it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. With all types of illnesses, injuries that the team had this year, we still was able to make it to a second round. So I'm definitely not a part of that bandwagon talking about fire coach.
But and they're not done either, guys. I mean, Mike, sorry. They're not done. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
If you think – I remember when Illinois lost last year to UConn, Brad Underwood made the comment. He liked the way that felt. If you think that he liked getting beat in the second round to Kentucky, he knew the history. He knew everything. He's just as competitive as we are. What coach coaches at that level who's not competitive? He's going to put together the best roster he can possibly put together. And again, I understand that it doesn't work for every kid, but don't just focus on your program. If you want to get on Twitter instead of bashing my ass all the time because I tell the damn truth, look on Twitter and look and see that other schools are losing kids too. It's not just Illinois. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. It's true.
No,
I
I was
mean,
just
you see it left and right.
No, I'm just trying to see if we're going to have to officiate an actual fight in the comments.
You got to relax, sir. Like, you got to woo-sa woo. I told you.
Griff, you listen,
Hey,
man.
Hey, have you seen? I feel like we need to get him with Jack Nicholson in anger management. Calm him down. Take the role of.
You guys are about to get a text from me, and then you'll see why I'm doing what I'm doing. I just wish people would wake up and realize.
Well,
I understand we all love Illinois. Everybody on all four of us on this podcast love the University of Illinois. I get it. I understand that. But at the same time, you can't be blind and think that this is just an Illinois issue, because it's not. We just talked about having one of the top 3 or 4 people in the transfer portal on campus, and they're in a position to get this guy. Look at the big picture. It's not just about your program. You can't be selfish like that. You can't be selfish like Mike mentioned about the kid. It's not right. These kids have an opportunity to make money. If my son had an opportunity to make that kind of money, yeah, I would tell him to do it. I really would. So we've talked about that, but man, just wake up and quit being so negative.
But can I throw a question to everybody? I'm sorry, Mike. I know that's your thing.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
My question is: can there ever be a time that when these kids get back to sign letter of intents, that it can be on a 2-year or a 3-year instead of this year-to-year basis? Can we get back to that?
It's going to take some litigation. It's going to take. So the problem that goes on with this, the reason we have this system the way it is right now, is everything that the NCAA tries to do ends up getting thrown out, and so there's got to be a legal framework that you're not, basically stopping somebody from earning money, and so that's got to be there. And then there is the fairness issue that, Brad and Ked and I have been talking about since we were teenagers. I could never understand why Brian Bosworth couldn't get a piece of frickin' pizza. Well, obviously he was in Oklahoma. He did. But, why couldn't Brian Bosworth get the 44 jersey that was selling nationwide? Why couldn't he get a piece of that pie? And when he was, all the stuff he was doing. And so I think, but they've got to figure out a legal framework to make this work. And I do think people have suggested 2 years deals. I think you'll actually see NIL deals that will have buyouts. And look, I think it's hilarious how every time a player leaves, you got a coach going, well, the loyalty's horrible. And by the way, I'm leaving to go to Villanova. Bye. So that's kind of a joke that people never care about the coaches. But once a 20-year-old does it, whoa, wait a minute, we can't do this.
Yeah.
So if you had buyouts like the coaches have for the players, then you have 2-year contracts. And if you've got enough money, I guess you can buy it out. The other thing that, but like I said, they've got to get this figured out from a legal standpoint, because the NCAA could say right now, you got to stay for 2 years. They could do that tomorrow. They would be in court by the end of the day tomorrow, and they would be thrown out. And
because they lose every time they go to court. That's
what they do. Exactly. Yep. So go ahead.
Why would they lose? I'm just lost to that because
you're stopping. Look, I was in the pharmaceutical industry when I first started in there. We had a non-compete, so that to allegedly keep it so that you couldn't go. I was in eye care, so you couldn't go from Allergan to another company in eye care. Well, those non-competes, if somebody got a job at a competitor, they would just go to court and they would say, big bad company is trying to prevent poor me from earning money and paying the bills for my wife and my kids. And the court would go, yeah, you can't stop them from earning money. And so now that most companies don't have non-competes anymore because they don't stand up in court very long. So I think it's the same thing when you start when you start preventing somebody from earning dollars, the courts generally, and there's plenty of lawyers on here who will tell you I'm giving you like the retarded version of this, but basically there's better ways to, there's more detail, but I'm not going to go into it. But that's basically what I was explained to by one of our lawyers. It's like, yeah, because when one of my reps went to a competing company, I'm like, can't we do anything about this? And he's like, no, we can't stop people from earning a living. So anyway, and Fedigator, we will go back to under the table deals, because if you think when there's $22 million to spend, if you think Ohio State and Alabama are going to go, hey, that 5-star linebacker in Chicago, we don't have enough money to afford him, so I guess Brett Bielema gets him. That's not going to happen. No. So they'll be under the table deals no matter what. So let's talk a little bit about the coaching, because Brad, there's an open assistant job, and we've got opportunities. And I think the national coaching meeting, usually doesn't it time up with the Final Four? So maybe you can talk a little bit about what to expect.
Yeah, so we enter into soon. It's April. It's either midnight April 3rd, I think it is, or something like that, where they go into what's called a dead period for about till the 10th, which surrounds the Final Four in San Antonio. And so what happens is they have this. That's the time they have their meetings. They give out all these awards, the coaching awards, Player of the Year awards, all these things down in San Antonio, and all these coaches basically they go in there and they start networking, and they're talking and. You'd be surprised how many movements happen during this time period. And they get to know guys too, because it may not be even for an opening they have this year. They're looking, okay, this guy might get a head coaching job next year, so I got a guy on my radar for when he leaves. So it's a constant thing of networking, getting to know each other, and this is when they really make those ends. I look for Brad Underwood talk to people during that time period and come up. I think he has a pretty good idea what he wants to do, and I think he'll add a guy to the staff. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if they wait until it may not be announced like the day after the Final Four, but I mean, I think sometime in April. I think they have their core idea for what they want to do in the portal right now, and obviously they know that there's going to be more guys enter after April 22nd, but that's when I look for them to kind of make that movement and add another person on the coaching staff. So
I do too. At some point in time, they're going to have to, because if you look at the way Illinois is recruited over the years with Jeff Alexander, who's done a really remarkable job, and people don't give him credit because Jeff's not as vocal and he's not seen much, and he does his thing. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you think Jeff Alexander is not a dangerous recruiter, you're kidding yourself. O speaks for himself. Tyler and Zach Hamer are kind of new to this, but it would be nice to have another guy with another different connection. We both know that Orlando and Jeff can work magic overseas, but, just having somebody maybe with Big Ten ties, and I'm not saying that Jamal Walker's coming back, but he's at Ohio State right now. A guy that has ties all across the country that's been around, and, hey, you know what? I know this kid. I know this guy who knows this guy. Maybe we can get him in the portal. So let's just be honest and say that this program is going to get players. And I like the NIL money. I'm a big, huge Josh Whitman fan because he's put coaches in position to win. You look at the football program and women's basketball program. Illinois was one of 5 schools to have somebody play in a bowl game, an NCAA tournament, and advance. So it's tough. And once this roster gets put together, what I will do is this. This is how I'm going to base the roster, and you three can chime in. It's got to be old for me. The players I'm going to have to trust and things that we see, and maybe we've seen them play in the portal. Everybody wants Josh Dix, and I know he's a high commodity. But what happens if he comes in and he shoots like Ben Humrickhouse? Sorry, Ben, nothing personal. Don't take it personal. But what if he comes in or he turns the ball over the way KJ did? So you don't know, but if they're going to be better, Griff, if you asked about this earlier, look at the teams playing in the tournament who's going to be in the Final Four. They're old, man. They just are. And somebody made a comment that we slipped on, and I really agree with this. The one negative thing I don't like about the NIL is that the Cinderellas, we didn't have those this year, because you know why? All those Cinderella players are taking off those rosters and they're somewhere else. There's no more, St. Mary of the who is going to upset Kansas. Those days are probably gone, because if you get one of those players, they're on better rosters. So those teams, they don't have a chance to compete. I feel bad for those schools.
But yeah, just to double down on that, you got a lot more upperclassmen staying in because of the bag that they're getting now. Like, these guys are making money. They don't need to jump ship to the NBA after
you were born too soon, Marcus.
Man, I was born 25 years too early. But with the recruiting, I'm gonna let y'all experts handle the recruiting aspect of everything. I'm just gonna sit back and watch the dominoes fall. But man, I wish I was born in a different era of basketball, because man, coming up in Peoria, we would have reaped the benefits. I couldn't imagine being in Peoria right now, being able to have an NIL deal and then go to the University of Illinois. Man,
okay, Griff. So tell us right now, how much we're going to put you on the spot. Mike Cagley, Brad Sturdy, and Kedrick Prince are going to put you on the spot. How much would you be worth? The way you play, tell us right now, not how much you want, but how much would you be worth, big fella?
Well, you got to say it's two different, because how I play basketball, my skill set would not be the skill set that's in college basketball to this day, because I was a traditional style big man. I play defense, I block shots. I really didn't space the floor. Now, if you say Brian Cook. Now, Brian Cook in this NIL, oh my God, 6'11", can dribble the ball, can shoot the three ball, millions and millions of dollars for him. But if you bring my skill set and you like, okay, we're going to have a traditional style offense, the skies will be the limit, because I was athletic enough. I played solid defense. I can hold my own on the block, and then I can score. So, yeah.
Yep.
I say give me about 1.5. 1.5.
There you go. Okay, I can agree with that. Heck, dude, I'm telling you what, if you put up a good year, you might get 2 the next year. I'm telling you, it's crazy.
Let's go to the one question that's been out there 100 times. So I'm going to throw this one at Brad, because it's been brought up multiple times. But Brad, is everything wrong with the Illini go down to Tyler Underwood?
That's a bad question.
Yeah. Well, so here's
be nice, Griff.
I ain't saying nothing. I like Tyler.
He's a nice guy. So
most people like Tyler. I think some players have some issues with Tyler. Obviously, I mean, we've seen that everywhere. But here's the reality. At the end of the day, I think it's a difficult thing to navigate. As a kid like Tyler, I think he's put in a tough spot. The Illinois offense the past 2 years have been top 15 in offensive efficiency. I mean, they were top 15 this year. The year before, they were top 5, right? Heading into the UConn game, they were on another level offensively, but obviously UConn put a stop to that. But so as we kind of look at this, Tyler has, there are two things that really work against him. One is his youth, because he's a guy who was a player, and then he's moving into the coach role. So you went from being a guy who would try and help keep Trent Frazier out of trouble to now who's trying to, make sure he gets home on time the night before a game. Although it didn't affect Trent. I mean, that guy he'd get home at 4 a.m. and at 5:45 he'd get up and run a mile in 4:50 or something like that. He's just insane. But Tyler's job was to do that, and now it's to be like a coach. And so it's he made that move. It's a difficult thing to do. The other thing he has going against him, it works for him in getting the job, but now it's going to work against him as long as he's working for his dad, is the fact that his last name's Underwood. Because there's always going to be claims of nepotism. It doesn't matter what he does. This guy, we could have the number 1 offense and win the national title next year, and people will still not think he deserved the job because his last name is Tyler Underwood. So he has those things working against him. Are there things he can do better? Certainly. Are there things he's going to work on to do better? I think there are. But I think we've thrown a lot of blame at guys. And at the end of the day, Brad Underwood decides what they do at Illinois. He decides what defense they run. He decides what offense they run. Obviously, those guys have input. And there are day-to-day things like Brad Underwood may not be it's like saying Brett Bielema in football. He's not calling the plays. But I'm telling you what, those guys will do what he wants them to do. They're going to play the style that he wants them to play.
Or they won't be there.
Or they're gone, right? You know what I mean?
Brett's a nice guy, but you do it.
Exactly. And so that's
and like it.
it's the same way in basketball, and I think that sometimes we lose sight of that, and we're going to blame this guy or that guy. But at the end of the day, it comes down to Brad Underwood, and it's up to him. And so Tyler takes a lot of grief that probably is undeserved. You know, I'm talking to some of the staff members that, you know, the last couple of days, I mean, they kind of feel bad for Tyler because he's put in a bad spot now, because, you know, he becomes like, he's kind of a scapegoat. He's the bad guy and so forth. And it's a tough thing for him. And I feel bad for him because, you know, regardless of, you know, your thoughts on this guy, that guy, whatever, I mean, to blame him for anything that happened really is not the way to do it. You want to blame Brad Underwood, I get it, because he's the head, he's the CEO, right? He's the chief of the program, and he's the guy who we should be talking about.
I don't want to keep harassing. I just use this as an example. So, and there's no, you know, hate relationship with Ben Humrickhouse, but I'm going to use them as an example. Brad and I especially knew coming in, he could really shoot the basketball. Is it really Tyler Underwood's fault that he couldn't shoot it? Is it Tyler Underwood's fault that down the stretch, that the second half of the season after the Washington game, that KJ couldn't put in the ocean?
Hey, question though. When we watched Rickhouse last summer, you were over there. That dude never missed. He never missed. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy never misses an open shot. And then the season started, and this guy always misses his open shots.
And I'm gonna tell you, I put on our message board early on, and I put on there. I had an NBA scout call me, and he's rough. I mean, he doesn't sugarcoat things. He's negative, to be honest with you. He had the nerve to say to me, "This team is dangerous. This team can shoot the snot out of the ball, KP. I'm telling you." And it didn't happen. It just, for whatever reason, I don't know, it didn't happen. But that's not a coach's fault. At the end, I'm gonna tell you, subbing. Now, I would say this. People think it's Coach Orlando, Coach Jeff, or Zach or Tyler. But the most part, now we don't know what they're whispering to each other. But I can tell you 90% of the time when I saw a sub go in, it was Brad Underwood. And there were some times when if you did see Coach or Tyler say, hey, put a guy in the game, Brad would tell that kid to sit back down. So at the end of the day, Brad, you're right. It's whether it be Shauna Green, Brett Bielema, or Brad Underwood, it's on them. They are the ones who make the final decision. But you have to hire coaches that you trust, guys that you know that have the same philosophy as you do. I know we're talking men's basketball, but I made this comment on the podcast before. When Illinois women's play basketball, when there's a play designed to be designed at the end of the game, Coach Beasley's got their clipboard and he's drawing up some magic. Do you know what that means? That means Shauna Green trusts that guy. And I've seen them. The play was developed. The woman didn't make the shot. But my point is that it's easy to blame. Kids don't perform. It's the coaches. It's a 50-50. I'm not just going to blame players. Coaches are involved, but so are the players. We just can't sit here and say, fire a coach every year. I don't want to see that. I mean, hell, look at what you're mad about right now with the players leaving.
Well, and the other thing is I'm going to stand up for Ben. He was third on the team at 34.3% 3-point shooting, where his biggest challenge was he didn't hit his 2-point shots as his overall field goal percentage was 37.5. So it was really the non-3-pointing that was the biggest challenge. And then he tended to miss in bunches. So like it was 0 for 7 in a game, which
it was 0 for 7 or then it was 4 for 6.
Right, exactly.
Which 4 out of 13. It's like, oh, look, he had a great game, but then it was to be 0 for 7 the next game. So that's I think where you just the next question, Brad, and then we probably got to kind of wrap this up as people are gonna want to get their week started and get to bed and get everything going. But what do you expect for Rickhouse and Ty Rodgers? Any thoughts on those two, because their name has come up quite a bit, and I know I was a huge guy that I would have loved to have had Ty Rodgers this season. That would have been great to have him. But what are your thoughts on those two players? I think this year we've talked about this. There were so many games, especially during those injury times, when Ty Rodgers would have been fantastic. They needed somebody to be a little bit better defensively and be a stopper. I think the concern right now with Ty is, and they want Ty back, especially, and I think he fits better with Merez not there. I know I'm not saying that you can't play together or whatever, but I think he fits better in that role because Ty can be that offensive rebounder. If you go back and look, Ty, that was his role before, right? Was to be kind of the offensive rebounder. He's not as big as Merez, but a lot of the same traits. He's a fantastic offensive rebounder. He's a guy who, tries to score around the rim, not an outside shooter. But he's probably a better ball handler and passer, and maybe not as good at shot blocking or whatever. So, but these are things that Ty Rodgers can do that are valuable, and I could see him being there and playing a role. But I think he's got to trust that he's going to have that role, and I think it's hard for him right now to trust that he's going to have that same role there. And so that's where they have to sell him, and they have to stick to it. I mean, at the end of the day, Ty Rodgers has 2 years left to play college basketball. He's used his redshirt year. He's got 2 years left to play college basketball. He's got to find the best situation for himself. Now, does he have an offer for a good NIL money to go somewhere and play as a guy who is coming off, who averaged 5-6 points a game against high major competition in 2024 and then didn't play this year? Does he have a great? I don't know. I mean, I would say probably not yet, but we'll see. Ben Rickhouse. I think Ben, if he comes back, it's going to be in a lesser role, and I think that option is there. But that's going to be a tough thing because he can't play him 30 minutes a game. But at the same time, I think he could go to I think the Missouri Valley, and I think he'd be really good, right? I mean, so he's already been really good at the Missouri Valley. Now he's 2 years old. He's played against high major. He made that adjustment. I think the game could slow down for him too with another year, under his belt. So maybe, but I think he could be a role player, come off the bench, but it's like 10 minutes a game. Is that the role you want? Or do you want to go to, I don't know, wherever, Indiana State, Illinois State, Bradley, whatever, and play 25, 30 minutes a game and be a key contributor? So, and then you probably draw them in the NCAA tournament first round. He hits 7 threes. So that'll be the way it works, right? That's the Illinois luck.
And then get drafted in the second round.
Yeah, exactly.
Kat, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. Here's my thought. I'm going to start with Ty Rodgers. It's got to be the right fit. It does. Ty Rodgers clearly saw the writing on the wall after the Ole Miss game. He didn't start. I think he might have played 10, 12 minutes, and he was in a different role. You got to understand he's a prideful guy. He was a starting guard on a team that played 38 games and went to the Elite Eight. And then all of a sudden, the very next year, your role changes. That's tough. That's tough for anybody to swallow. As a man, as a young guy, it doesn't matter. That's tough for you to adjust to. I do think with Trey White leaving, I do think there's possibly a role for him because the one difference, the reason I like Trey was an outstanding cutter, but he could also shoot the three. He wasn't great at it, but you had to honor that. And so you couldn't dork him, as they call it. You had to guard him. Now, there's people who will tell you Ty can shoot the basketball, but we've not seen it. I've seen it in practice, I'll say that, or I've seen clips of it, but I've not seen him do it in games. If he's able to shoot the basketball, because he can defend and he can rebound, that's the one thing he really does, and he's tough. He was also a unbelievable cheerleader. I know that's probably not a good word for him on the sidelines. He didn't pout. He didn't sulk. He was in the games. He was kids knocking down threes. He was up cheering just like he was going to go into the game. So if they could convince him to stay and give him a role where it matters, not just 4 or 5 minutes a game. Because I'm going to tell you, if he was going to get 4 or 5 minutes a game, this is not going to be a popular opinion. I would leave because you don't go from playing to 25 minutes a game and then all of a sudden you're going to 4 or 5. So it's different. He's a tough-minded kid. Ben Rickhouse, if he is going to come back, his role definitely needs to be a 10 to 15-minute guy. And if he gets on a heater, let him cook, baby, as they say. Let him go. I'm cool with that. But if he's not, then you go along with it. I just don't think you should just give it to him because he's older, because he's a senior. Put the best guys on the court, and if they produce, they produce. And if they can't, then you accept your role. And then this is what, unfortunately, we talked about all show. If you don't like your role, guess what? You get to leave the next year and go somewhere else.
I can't even add anything to any of that. You guys pretty much nailed it. But to make it short, I would love Rodgers to come back because me personally, I will put him as a starter. I think we saw the script with this team that offense can take you so far. I think next year you need to lead with more defense, but still have offensive players. I would love to have him and Boswell front head my defense. Front head my defense, and then we can put the offense around those two guys.
Yeah, and you talked about that in some of the podcasts.
Yep.
So, Brad, another thing is...
Can I say something I just saw? Just to see how crazy this is, Kendrick Nunn just signed a new contract with the team in Greece, making him the highest paid player in Europe at 4.5 million pounds or whatever, euros or whatever the heck that is.
Go Ken.
We got, that's the highest paid professional in Europe, and we're paying college kids, $3 million.
Yes.
I mean, so the world's turned upside down, or we have too much money in America. It's crazy.
So, Brad, two other real quick things that have come up. Can you talk a little bit about the KJ injury, and then your thoughts on the rumor that's going around on X? So it's probably ridiculous.
So it must be true.
Of Nate Oates being very interested in Maryland, because I don't like that rumor.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard the guy George Mason mentioned. I've heard.
I like that.
I've heard. Yeah, go ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, somebody's knocking at my door. I'm gonna have to go.
See you, Marcus.
Yeah.
I have a guy who I heard that maybe Rick Barnes could retire. Maybe Nate Oates goes to Tennessee. I've heard that too. So I don't know. I don't know why you'd leave where you're at, because you got a pretty good gig.
He thinks football gets too much money.
So, but yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. Somebody said there's no way Maryland doesn't have an athletic director. I'll tell you this: they're gonna have to hire a coach before they hire an AD.
Yeah,
because they don't have. You can't wait, because if you wait 2 or 3 weeks, it's too late. You're not gonna be able to have a team.
Actually, he would have input in who his AD is. I mean, I could see where that's very desirable.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, so I don't know about that one, but it's wild. So what were your KJ injury? So it's interesting. So I talked to I was talking to NBA scouts. I've talked to scouts from like Utah, Orlando, and Dallas so far. And so it was interesting when we were talking about Will and KJ. One thing that came with KJ was the difference. KJ was shooting 41% from three before he had the injury, and then he shot 25% from three the rest of the season. Same shots didn't go in. So when you're a shooter and you gather, if you've ever done the Kobe thing where you snap the ball, whether you're going to your left, it comes this way into your hand, you put it in your palm. If you're going to your right, how you come up with it, all those things are different. When he goes to his left, he's snapping in, and then pulls that in. Somebody talked about that not being the same gather. And so if you break it down on film, it actually looks different in his gather spot on that step back. So you can see him changing it because he doesn't have the same strength or confidence in that left hand. So is that a I don't know. I mean, I can't tell you that because it would take, I'd have to go through all kinds of stuff, but it was just talking to some scouts. That was one of the things that we talked about. And it does make sense how that works. And so I think that's intriguing. So maybe that explains a lot of the drop off that he had, because he wasn't quite 100%, even though he may have been healthy enough to play. Like many times we're healthy enough to play, but that doesn't mean you're 100%. You know what I mean? And so that's a tough thing to do when you go through that. So that's kind of what we talked about. What was the other question, Mike?
That was it.
That's it? Okay, good.
Well, Mike, I want to tell you, I think if I've had a scout ask about KJ too, and the scout knew about him being injured after the Washington game. And truthfully, he's not been the same kid. And maybe I know he wanted to play. He wanted to help the team. Maybe he should have signed a little bit more until he was 100% healthy, because, I mean, if you look at the draft boards, and they don't mean anything, a scout will tell you that, and Brad knows, these are just people who are putting opinions out there. At the end of the day, they may be 100% wrong or 100% right. He probably should have signed out a few more games if he was injured. I don't know if he wasn't. I know Illinois did not play a kid that shouldn't be playing, but if he wasn't 100% healthy, because you know how kids are, the athletes. I mean, if you look at it, he beats it. He was sick. His ankle was hurting. He still wanted to go out there and gut it out. Will Riley was hurt. He wanted to go out there and he wanted to gut it out. So I applaud the kid for that. But I feel bad because at the end of the day, I think it hurt his draft stock, because people only remember what they see. They don't care about the injuries, and I know Coach Underwood and the staff will probably talk to the scouts and tell them, but I think that hurt him a little bit, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, folks, that is we're going to wrap on that. There's a lot of stuff going on. I would tell you guys, IlliniGuys.com. This is the time to join. It is only 27 cents a day, $99 a year. And you get these two guys who the NBA draft, the NBA scouts call them up to get an opinion, not the other way around. And then you obviously have their long-term connections with both Illinois coaching staff and, of course, basketball people across the Midwest and the nation. So the bottom line is this is the time to join. And of course, if you're right now, you can see that going across the bottom. But if you don't follow us on Twitter, hit at Mike Kegley, hit at KedPrince4, hit at Sturdy32, and give us a follow. That would get you a lot of information right away. And if you have a chance to smash the follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, please do that as well. And anytime you can give us a review, that doesn't cost you any money, but it does help us quite a bit. 5-star review really, really helps us as well. And again, if you like what we have to bring, please come over to IlliniGuys.com. Bottom line is we're here to enjoy our fandom as Illinois, Big Ten, and college sports fans. We've all three coached, and we're not here to rip on kids. We're not here to say the coach is an idiot. We assume everybody's doing the best they can do. Sometimes it doesn't work out. And certainly, if they'd have known that they were going to airball a shot, the kid wouldn't have shot it. That's pretty easy. So we assume everybody's doing the best they can. And if you want that type of attitude, then we're a place you might want to join and have a good time with. If you want somebody who's going to scream and yell and be like what we see on TV with all the political and sports guys who think their volume is what gets people to attract them, we're not your cup of tea then. So I would definitely tell you that we're more of a positive things in, positive things out. Until next time, folks, go Illini.